So we talked about our lab in the Weiser Patton building. That's our bigger lab. But this is sort of the old faithful lab. And this is where a lot of independent research by students takes place, and also faculty archaeology research takes place in this lab. We have a couple of workstations that we have for grad students or undergrads that are doing independent research. We have work tables that everybody is welcome to use. Archaeology runs on coffee, so we have the ever-present coffee table. Our student association does a weekly coffee hour, and so we meet in this lab. Of course, also explains the couch. Nobody's ever taken a nap, of course, on the couch, never. Back in here, this is more of Dr. Wyatt's realm. Dr. Wyatt is an archaeobotanist, so he studies ancient plants, and so he has his microscopes and his other his plant samples and that kind of stuff that he uses. And then sort of the last part of our resources here, we have some, we call them compacting shelves. The storage for all of our comparative materials that we use in biological anthropology and also in archaeology, but then also a lot of archaeological artifacts and soil samples and all of that other stuff. One of the things that I mentioned when we were talking about the resources that we have in the labs is what we call a comparative collection. They're standards that you have that you can that you know about, that you can then compare what you find, and it helps you identify what you find, or you can compare them between one another to make observations about differences. Here at MTSU, we have sort of 3 different groups of comparative materials. All of these are casts, right? They're made out of really sturdy nylon material. They are cast from original fossils, but you actually get to put your hands on a near exact replica. For example, this particular one, you are probably familiar with Lucy, and this is the cast of the Australopithecus Afarensis skull. And having an opportunity to hold this in your hand really gives you a good idea about how very different these hominin ancestors were. And then we also have Primate, and this one happens to be a chimpanzee. One of the reasons that we keep these living primates is to help us make comparisons, and it helps us learn more about ourselves to be able to look at our closest living relatives. And then the third group of comparative materials that we have is the human. And so one of the things that we really try and make sure for all of these skulls, but particularly for the ones that are modern, is to make sure that students really treat them with respect and to maintain their dignity. We have not just skulls, but of course we have the skeletons, what we call the postcranial material. There's some things that we have in comparative, in these nylon casts that students might not ever see in the lab in any other context. We get to show them in casts so that when they get out there in the real world and are seeing this stuff as an archaeologist or a forensic anthropologist, they'll be more familiar with what they're looking at. So we think it's really important to have these comparative materials available here at MTSU.